Hey everyone, it's Meghann Cuniff back with another video for you. I'm getting more into the YouTube as you've seen. I've done a couple collaborations recently. I wanted to thank Natalie the lawyer chick for having me on yesterday to talk about Tory Lanez's upcoming sentencing. It was a great conversation. We went live for over 2 hours. She's got the video saved on her page, so go check it out. It was a great discussion about the different scenarios that he could face at sentencing. We went through the documents, explain things. She had some good insight from her own experience as a criminal defense attorney. So I recommend you all check out her page. I want to thank her for the discussion. We'll probably do more collaborations later on. And then I also had a good conversation last night with Darnell, my boy and your boy Darnell. It's your boy Darnell. Check out his page. He's got a channel where he does various interviews, but he wanted to talk to me about all the drama going on online with various rumors about me like filing police reports or suing people or something like that. And I kind of went back and forth on it because I don't want to spend too much time responding to that stuff or getting into kind of the rumor and the gossip mill. Like you're like justifying or almost validating rumors when you like respond to them like that. So I kind of went back and forth on it, but I just told myself that I control what I say. You know, I can't control what other people say, but I can control how I respond. And it was getting to the point where if you see these videos that are being made about me with my headline, with the headline has my name in it misspelled, and they're just spreading lies about me, it's like I need to find some way to respond, especially when these videos have like tens of thousands of views and they're not giving me any kind of channel to respond. If I comment in the comments and say, hey, I've responded to the false claims, like my comment doesn't show up. So, you know, I just thought this would be a good way to just kind of explain who I am and what's going on. But my experience with this kind of stuff goes way back to early in my reporting career, because it's not like critics or anything like that is new or original to just the Tory Lanez case. When you cover any kind of controversial case or a case with, you know, one side or the other to it, you're going to attract some kind of, you know, response or feedback from people. And when I remarked to Darnell in our conversation last night that when I told a friend about all the heat I was taking online, especially a few weeks ago, like before the motion for new trial, it had gotten really active, and she just kind of laughed and was like, oh, it's just like the Michael Avenatti case. Exactly the same. And I was like, oh no, but this is really, she's like, oh, it's exactly like Michael Avenatti, exactly the same. He was this thieving lawyer who's now in federal prison, but he had this weird moment in 2018 where he got really famous, and there was actually rumors, and not rumors, real talk, that he was going to run for president. But he represented Stormy Daniels, the woman porn star who had the affair with Donald Trump, which is now the source of his criminal charges in New York State Court. But back in 2018, he was all over TV, and I covered him from the beginning with the Daily Journal up through Law and Crime, because while he was all over CNN, we all knew about his financial problems, his problems with clients, that kind of thing. So when the criminal charges were filed coast to coast, I was there to cover it all. And I actually live tweeted his trial in Santa Ana in 2021. And that was back when I had 7,000 followers online, and I got 2,000 followers overnight covering the Avenatti thing, and it was, a big thing. I mean, look at this. Stormy Daniels actually shouted me out on it. But he had a small group of really dedicated fans. I mean, it was really only 10 people or so, but they were very dedicated, and they would they would give me a lot of crap online. I mean, they would defend him, but it was also kind of like it gets with some of the stuff in the Tory Lanez case, where they're not just defending him, they're personally attacking me. I mean, it's very online, vicious. It just gets a little much. So as this person here said it, wouldn't it just be easier to block these Avenatti cultists? So I got to know the block button through that, and the Tory Lanez thing is basically just the Avenatti thing on a much larger scale. But my way of dealing with the Avenatti stuff, it was kind of a mixture of, as you see, I did respond when I think this was when they were freaking out because I called it a holding cell or something that Avenatti would be in if he had appeared in this court thing or something, even though that's what everybody else calls it, you know. And I made the mistake of engaging, which I kind of learned you just really shouldn't do. But there's this line between responding to trolls and then also just engaging with your readers, because to this day people will ask me questions or respond on Twitter, and I want to respond, you know. I mean, they're not being malicious, they have real questions, we have good engagement. So that is something that I picked up on early at the Spokesman Review. I mean, reader engagement, responding to reader emails, responding to voicemails, that kind of thing. And I was thinking back to the stories that I've covered over the years that have garnered a lot of heat, or a lot of dedicated people kind of people dedicated to criticizing me, basically. And one that really came to mind, probably the first one, was a murder case in Spokane in 2009, 2008. A woman, Shelley Stark, she worked as an online prostitute. Her name was Nikita Jennifer. An online prostitute is in men could set up dates with her online and then meet her in person. And she had actually been charged with the murder of her husband. She'd gunned him down in their Spokane home. And the story was that she'd been put up to it by her John turned boyfriend, and he kind of convinced her that they could do a self-defense claim because her husband was abusive over the years, and then there was an life insurance policy that the boyfriend was after. So it was this salacious story. I remembered my editor, I was the night reporter at the time, and my editor wanted me to do kind of a deep dive on who were these people, what exactly went on. It would be like a Sunday read. So I got really into it after that, ended up covering the trial. It was the first real murder trial that I'd covered, and I thought it was, you know, so big because it was a murder case, and it was at the time. And the criticism that I got online was from a woman who it was an anonymous account, but it was pretty obviously the prosecutor's wife. There were two prosecutors on the case, and one had a wife who was very interested in the case. She would post on true crime blogs, not under her full name, but with enough identifying details that it was obvious that it was Larry Haskell's wife. And she would share, you know, inside information, that kind of thing. I was reminded of this the other year when my friend, who's still a reporter up in Spokane, contacted me because Larry Haskell, who is the prosecutor on this case, is now the top elected prosecutor in the entire Spokane County. And there has been a longstanding issue with his wife posting all this crazy racist Trump MAGA QAnon stuff online. And he was doing a story about that. And he actually had heard from Shelley Stark because Shelley Stark is in state prison for murder, and she contacted Daniel to let him know about a state bar complaint she'd filed against the prosecutor years ago. I don't remember this at the time. I never did a story, but the state bar actually did an investigation into the fact that the prosecutor's wife was commenting on the blog so much. And I'd gone back and looked over my emails for Daniel, and you'll see in Daniel's story here, he mentions the fact that Leslie Haskell once said that I had no integrity. And I remember reading that in the article at the time, like even like 13 years later, I read it, and it just stung a little bit. Like I was like, oh man, it just bothers me that she said that, you know, but it's part of journalism that you just, I mean, how do you wouldn't like comment on the article and be like, oh yeah, well, Leslie Haskell, this is what I think of you. Like, it's just criticism that you get as a journalist, and you have to have a thick skin and kind of rise above it. And then, you know, you just remind yourself that in the end, if you just keep doing your job and trying to have integrity, hopefully that'll actually count for something. And then it's also a good reminder that, well, in the end, this is the woman who said that I didn't have any integrity. And then another story where I just remember getting so much online flack from was actually about a white supremacist lawyer named Edgar Steele. He lived in North Idaho, and this was back in 2011. He got arrested in a federal murder plot for hiring his handyman to kill his wife and mother-in-law. And I talked about this briefly with Darnell last night, and I just thought about the story. It was like, wow, what a story. Like, I mean, to this day, it's like, I can't believe I covered that and that actually happened. Years before, Edgar Steele had been a lawyer for this guy Richard Butler, who's actually the founder of the Aryan Nations. Just a racist white supremacist, had like Nazi flags. I mean, he started the Aryan Nations up in North Idaho, and he had a compound up there. And the Southern Poverty Law Center, Morris Deese, back in the heyday of the Southern Poverty Law Center, this is kind of the case that put them on the map. They actually sued the Aryan Nations on behalf of a family who'd been attacked near the compound, and the case ended up bankrupting the Aryan Nations, and Edgar Steele was the lawyer representing Richard Butler in the case. So he was kind of known for that around North Idaho, and he had crazy podcasts or something, and he said that he was going to run for governor of Idaho, but he was kind of just your classic Idaho crackpot racist. But when he got arrested for plotting to kill his wife and mother-in-law, it was a pretty big story. Just, I mean, here Edgar Steele resurfaces again, and I did plenty of stories on it for the Spokesman Review. And actually went down to Boise, Idaho, and covered his trial. But these people have been entrenched in the white supremacist movement for a long, long time. He and his wife, their supporters, because his wife was the victim in this thing, and she actually ended up taking his side. In the very beginning, he was arrested. He was going to have his first appearance in federal court, and we hadn't heard anything about the informant, but obviously the informant was the handyman who was hired to kill the wife and mother-in-law, ended up going to the feds and wearing a wire and recording Edgar Steele doing all this, was a witness in the case. But what he didn't tell them was that he'd actually already rigged a pipe bomb under the wife's car. His defense in the whole case was that, he just rigged it so it wouldn't actually explode. But while Edgar Steele is getting ready to appear in court, his wife drives down from their home in Sandpoint to go to the courthouse in Coeur d'Alene to go to the court appearance. And she added enough time beforehand that she actually stopped at like a Jiffy Lube or one of those oil change stations to get her oil changed. And so the young guy who's going to change her oil goes up under her car and sees this huge pipe bomb under it. And the cops end up showing up to it, and they realize who she is, that it's Cindy Steele, Edgar Steele's wife, and they make the connection that this is a pipe bomb from the victim in this murder for hire case that we're prosecuting right now. And so they contact the FBI informant, the handyman that Steele hired to kill his wife and mother-in-law, and he's like, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you about something. So they ended up charging the handyman with that, and there were just all these twists in the case that made it so inflammatory to an already kind of inflamed crowd, because Edgar Steele had supporters who were so entrenched in the government conspiracy, white supremacist movement, that they were convinced that this was all a conspiracy by the government, that they'd manufactured these tapes of Edgar talking about the plot. That was actually his defense in trial, was that these tapes were manufactured by the government. So all the flack I was getting online was from people like this, who were saying that I was an agent for the government. I'm a agent of the JOG or the ZOG, the Zionist occupied government. Just complete anti-Semitic. I mean, it's white supremacist trash, garbage. It was like when I first kind of learned all about that world, and it's a really dark, disgusting world. But one of them actually commented online, and it used to really bother me when they would do this stuff, but he said, this time next year, Miss Cuniff will be running government interference as she does today, paid for her efforts. I mean, it was kind of funny, but it was just like, oh man, these people give me flack all the time. But the funny thing is, I actually went online to see if I could find some of those comments, and the Spokesman Review changed their system years ago so that the articles are all still there, but the comments from that time are gone, because they got rid of that commenting section, because there's kind of been a reckoning with newspapers over the years about the way they allow those anonymous commenters. But it just shows how fleeting all that stuff is. In the end, my article remains, but all the weird comments that I took so personally or everything at the time are gone. And it just kind of shows the importance of just staying above the fray, and no matter how obnoxious it is, like, you just kind of have to laugh it off and move on. But when we talk about threats, the Edgar Steele case is a good reminder that actually when I was down in Boise the day of the verdict, up in Spokane, they did have like a mysterious package dropped off at the lobby. And it was some weird looking guy who'd come in and done it. Didn't turn out to be anything, but the cops did show up to it because the Spokesman Review was actually firebombed by white supremacists back in the 80s, the Spokane Valley office. And there was kind of this long, proud history at the Spokesman Review of fearless reporting and standing up to that stuff. And being fearless was kind of part of the game. One of the stories that I covered early on there that I got some flack from his supporters and that kind of thing was there was actually a devil worshipping sex offender that moved to town. We would get notices from the sheriff's office when new registered sex offenders moved or relocated or that kind of thing. And it was usually just kind of a routine thing that maybe we'd put on my Sirens and Gavels blog. I covered it, or if it was a big enough, high profile enough case that we might do an article in the paper, a small one. And the notice on this was that a devil worshipping sex offender, well, they didn't say that he worshipped the devil in the notice, but he was a level 3 sex offender, which is the worst kind, who had kidnapped a woman and kidnapped a teenager and pimped her at truck stops across the country, had moved to Spokane. And when you look at a picture of this guy, it's just like, what? Oh my God, what? I mean, this was just way beyond like the sex offender notices that we usually get. It's like, is this some kind of joke? But no, I mean, he was real. It's like, you look this all up. It's like, no, this guy just moved to Spokane Valley, actually. But so I was doing a story on his background and all of that. And remember, I was going to go to this trailer park where he supposedly lived to see if we could get some kind of comment from him. And I'd put in a photo request for it, which is how we got the photo desk attention on stories that we were doing. And I was talking to one of the photographers who'd, of course, been at the Spokesman Review forever and had seen all kinds of things about, why I wanted to do this and what we were doing. And he was like, what kind of photo are we going to get of him, or could we get of him that's like any different from, I mean, look at this mugshot. I mean, I think this mugshot kind of tells the story here, kind of thing. And he also made the comment that, a photographer is not your bodyguard. And it was just kind of a joking kind of thing. But also, I mean, it was serious too. And it's like, part of reporting is being kind of fearless and not being stupid and just putting yourselves in bad situations. But the Spokesman Review, like I said, had a long, proud legacy of kind of heroic, brave reporting about Ruby Ridge, the standoff up there. There was a reporter who'd covered the white supremacists, the biker gang movements forever. And the story told at his retirement party was that when they'd rented a plane because they heard that the feds were raiding Ruby Ridge to arrest Randy Weaver, they rented a plane and had a private pilot driving them or flying them around the cabin up in northern Idaho. And Randy Weaver actually got out of his cabin and was shooting at the plane. And the story was that Bill actually wanted to keep circling a couple of times to see if they could get a couple more photographs. And any photograph that you've seen of the cabin, the aerial shots of the cabin at Ruby Ridge, those are from that trip. But I mean, that was kind of the environment that I grew up with at the Spokesman, and kind of taught to, this is how you deal with the FLAK. You either, you ignore it and you just keep on reporting and doing what you can do. So as far as feeling threatened or feeling like I've ever gotten death threats, I was trying to think back to what the most threatening thing that I've ever received, or if I've ever felt actually threatened. And I just don't think there's ever been anything that really rises to the level of a reportable threat. But I did think back to a voicemail I got back in 2009. I'd written an article about a motorcycle crash. A motorcyclist had died in a crash. And when we looked him up in the Spokesman Review archives, he had all sorts of stuff. He was an old biker. He was in a biker gang. It said his nickname was actually Herpes. He'd gone to prison for killing a couple people. And, we did a story just on his background, which was kind of common, about how we told the truth about people in Spokane. I mean, and looking back, I do kind of see the headline as, I can see why his friends looked at this and were like, well, this is kind of a crappy article. But this voicemail that I got was from obviously one of his friends. And we actually had digital voicemails sent to us, and I saved a bunch over the years, and I still actually have it, and I brought it up and listened to it. And you can actually hear it right here. I'll play it.
And I'm calling in reference to the article you had in the paper today about a Michael Frazier who was killed at a motorcycle accident he's a ghostwriter. I see here you got his name all fucking wrong. It's not herpes, it's spook. And on top of that, you got his military record in here, or the fact that when he was released from prison, he changed his whole life and he had a wonderful girlfriend and he's going to be missed. And there's a lot of wonderful things that he did in his life. I don't see any of that in here. I just see how you framed him as being a real badass, and maybe society's better without him being around. So I want you to know, Megan, there's a lot of us that are really pissed off with what you did.
So, I mean, in the end, the end part was a little, but you know what? She's upset, and he was her friend, and she kind of has a point. And in journalism, you listen to stuff like that. You just don't blow those people off as being way too inflamed. I mean, you try to sort through the emotion and get to the facts, and just, remember, you're writing about real people, and that writing about people has an effect on, the people who love them, and just, live and learn kind of thing. I mean, there wasn't anything that we needed to correct, but just looking back, I'm like, it's not like she made bad points about the way the article was framed. But I do remember at the Spokesman, we made an effort to reach out to his family, reach out to his friends when we were putting together this article. So the editors all agreed it was fair. But the last part, I mean, is that a threat? I mean, I remember we played it from editors and we just kind of chuckled because did I feel like I needed to look over my shoulder when I was going home that night? I didn't think so. And there was another case I covered back in 2009 for the Spokesman about a guy who'd actually been gunned down while working on his car. And again, we had such a vast archive at the Spokesman Review of everything that had happened in Spokane that when I looked him up in the archives, Jack Lemire, he'd actually been an informant in a big federal methamphetamine case against biker gangs, Hells Angels and the Gypsy Jokers. That's one really active area up in Spokane is the biker gangs. The Hells Angels actually have their own headquarters up there. The Washington chapter does. And the guy who died, Jack Lemire, 12 years before he was gunned down, he was actually telling a federal judge in federal court about his testimony and how he was worried he was going to be killed over it. And he said, I've been told that the Hells Angels are going to kill me, that the Gypsy Jokers are going to tear me to pieces. I did an article on that, drawing attention to his past. And I have, it says right here that cops are aware of his past role as a federal informant. They don't believe that his slaying involved anything other than the dispute over the vehicle trade. But his family was really upset over this article because they don't like the fact that it was revealed that he was a snitch, even though it was already out there in articles before that he had worked as an informant. But in that area and with his family, they did not like the fact that he was labeled as an informant and a snitch in death. So they took a lot of heat with me. I looked through, I couldn't find any voicemails, but I just remember at the time getting a lot of calls and a lot of emails kind of threatening from his family. And I remember going to the court hearing for the guy who was arrested, this Merle Harvey guy who apparently didn't have any ties to biker gangs, police said, but his family saw me there and was upset, and they were trying to confront me in the hallway. And it's not like the police were ever involved. I mean, I didn't feel like anything like that. And in the end, as a reporter, that's something that you're gonna have to respond to and deal with. And those people have they have every right to talk to reporters and ask them questions about the story and take issue with things. It's not like they ever actually physically harmed me or physically threatened me or anything like that. So it was just something that you deal with as a reporter, and it's having a thick skin and just remembering to have empathy for, everybody that you write about. All the criticism we get a lot of praise too. I mean, people really do appreciate what reporters do, especially when you're at the Spokesman Review or a paper like that where you work locally and you live in town and you're covering the local community. There are a lot of longtime subscribers who appreciate it. And when I was looking through the voicemails trying to find the nasty ones, I found some good ones where I'm like, I should play these too. But this one always stood out. This guy used to send me voicemails quite a bit.
And I want to really compliment you on today's article. Your article made the front page, Inmate Granted Holiday Wish. That is excellent, and I'm glad you wrote that article, and I'm glad the Spokesman Review put it on the front page to inform the public what these idiot judges and the courts are doing. This guy's facing 80 months on the December the 8th, and she's going to let him out?
This one stood out, too.
And I just wanted to applaud you on probably the finest title to a story and to an accurate story, and the reason why I know that is it doesn't list as an AP writer. But again, congrats on the good article. Keep up the good work. Thank you very much. And my office phone's 92.
So, I mean, after all that, when I hear stuff like this...
Why are you always somewhere ear hustling, bitch? That bitch must got a hearing aid about as thick as them damn glasses. That hoe can hear across the motherfucking world.
I mean, it's not that big a deal. It's kind of funny. I mean, really though, my glasses are pretty thick. I'm super nearsighted, guys. Like it's been like this for a really, really long time. But yeah, I mean, I try not to take it personally. So when all the Tory Lanez stuff, I mean, it started, as you'll see that was only like a week after I had covered the Avenatti stuff. I'd been covering the Harvey Weinstein stuff, the Danny Masterson stuff. So, you know, here I am covering another celebrity trial. Although one of Avenatti's, the trial watchers for Avenatti actually commented after I started covering the Tory Lanez trial. He said Megan's interactions and followers have gone up 50-fold now that she started covering the trials of actual celebrities as compared to the trials of certified platinum nobody, Michael Avenatti, which I always thought that was pretty funny because it was true. And I was just astonished by how many followers and how much interaction I got. Like I said, covering the Avenatti trial, I got 2,000 followers overnight, and that was really big for me. When the Tory Lanez stuff took off, I got 3,000 followers in an hour. I was like, wow, where is all this coming from? And I think it was the Shade Room and the Source and all those hip-hop blogs that were screenshotting my tweets and putting them out there. But it was honestly hard to keep track of all that stuff because I was trying to cover the trial. I mean, I was in court all day, and I wanted to write a story. I wanted to get tweets out, and we couldn't have our phones in court. So I would get out, and of course you want to look at your replies. It's like everybody else. Like you get a little dopamine hit when you get all that stuff going on, but you've got a job to do, and I'm trying to use my time on Twitter to actually tweet new things. So it really was when I sat down after the trial, I had like some time to just sit on my couch and like look at the replies, like look up on my name and be like, wow, look at all this stuff. Because I knew that I was trending on Twitter the day of the verdict, but you know, it was just a little overwhelming to keep track of it all. And I mean, of course I see the critics on there, and anytime you're dealing with big numbers like that, you're gonna get that. And I have a friend here in South Orange County who has an even way bigger presence on like Instagram and Substack than I do, and she of course has her detractors and critics, and she told me that appearance, they always go for appearance, because I mean, just the stuff that I get online was just getting, you know, I didn't get anything like that from Avenatti supporters or anything like that. It's a little more intense with that. But the stuff that happened over the last few days with the, you know, me filing a police report or me suing or something like that, it was just so silly because, like I said, I mean, I just went through all these examples of what I dealt with over the last, what is it, even 16 years. I guess I went back to 2008 or 2009, but you know, I was writing for my college paper in 2005. I started at the Spokesman in late 2005, December 2005. So I saw that the whole time. And one thing I've done a lot of is lurk online. Like I haven't had a huge Twitter presence all this time, but I've been on Twitter all this time. And I've definitely paid attention to people who have big presences, reporters who are taking a lot of heat. And I have studied how they respond to them. And the people who get into the mud with them, I've always just thought it looks better to stay above the fray. And I, of course, have not obeyed that at all. You know, I've gotten into the fray a little bit, tried to respond. And just the other day, somebody, or a few weeks ago when it was happening, another reporter messaged me, was like, hey, word of advice, do not respond to these accounts with like 16 followers, you know. But he has a point. I mean, he was trying to be a friend and give me some advice. So I was kind of at this point between like, what do I don't want to get into the dirt in the gossip game and like create these kind of manufactured rivalries, but I felt like I needed to stick up for me, because another thing is, I mean, these people are making money off my name and face, and they're not even spelling my name right, but they're like putting my name in their headline and putting my face up on their screen for like 20 minutes or something. It's weird. And it's a little beyond anything that I've ever gotten before, but I know it's just the gossip crowd, the tea crowd, you know, it's what people are into. So hopefully I can provide a little balance, and I thought it would help to just let people kind of hear from me myself about what I've been through and how I try to deal with this, because I am not the type that is going to like overreact to this stuff, you know, think that I'm being threatened and, you know, I need to, you know, get bodyguards and protection or something. It's just, I feel like that stuff's overblown. So hopefully I make sense here. And Tory's going to be in court on Tuesday. I don't think it's not going to be much. He's not being sentenced. They're going to set the new date for his sentencing, but I'm going to be there. I'm sure a bunch of other people will be there. I plan on doing another video update, and I'm definitely going to do a story that's going to have some good information, hopefully some new court documents. But check out legalaffairintrials.com. Give me a subscription if you haven't already, and then subscribe to my YouTube. Give me a like and comment if you can. Try to keep it nice, and send it to your friends. Let everybody know I am on YouTube now. Thank you. See you later.